I was a nurse at Stockfield General Hospital for a couple of months. The pay was terrible, but it kept food on my plate, and I felt valued, even though I had only just joined. It seemed pretty normal to start with. You got the occasional patient who would be absolutely raving, and they'd terrify me. But it wasn't as if I was going to quit my job over a couple of schizos. Then, in the middle of August, I came across inconsistency. A patient, James Brookson, in his early 20s, was suffering from cancer. It just disappeared. There was no record of him being signed out. He simply vanished. I'd spoken to him just the day before. I asked a couple of other nurses, but they didn't remember him. The only reason I remembered this guy is because he'd asked me to contact his wife, whom he divorced some time ago, to apologize and to say that he still loved her. I checked the digital records to see if he had just been moved to another ward. However, this file didn't appear. It was as if it had never existed. The computer couldn't have accidentally done that. There were way too many safeguards. Someone deliberately deleted this guy from our system. So I searched the backup of the records. I found him, and yet there was barely any information about the guy. There was just a tag. HF. HF. And the record saying that he had been moved to the Oxley ward. I had no idea what HF meant. The only time I ever heard it being used was when the caretakers referred to the hospital food. And as for the Oxley ward, I had never even heard of it. There was no record of it on the plans, and the other staff had no clue as to where it was. The night when I got home, I looked up the hospital's blueprints online. There it was, in the basement, just down from the catering area. When I got to work this morning, I was in a much brighter mood. I'd found him. Me, being the idiot that I was, had forgotten that he had been moved. After completing my normal rounds, I headed down to the lunch hall to use the rest of my lunch break to check on him in the Oxy ward when I was interrupted by the hospital director. I never liked him. He always seemed to be searching for some reason to dislike me. Today, it was like he deliberately crossed paths with me, though he acted surprised when he saw me. His voice sounded on edge as he spoke, and his bushy mustache twitched in a particular fashion. "Ah, Scott, good to see you. How's your day going?" "Good, thank you, sir," I replied. The way he spoke was odd, strained and slightly hurried, as if he wanted to skip over the small talk and get right to the more pressing subject. "I've been meaning to speak to you. It's a happy coincidence that we met," he said, eyes darting up and down my face as if he was trying to see if I suspected him of wrongdoing. "Oh," I responded, wondering whether it was coincidence. "You see, I've been hearing from the other staff that you have been inquiring about some, Oxley ward. Is that right? Because I've never heard of it." Our meeting definitely wasn't a coincidence. His voice had taken a very controlled, practiced tone. Yeah, I said. "I lost track of a patient, and the records say he was moved there. If you want, I could help, although I'm sure we don't have a ward of that name." My brain went haywire. He had to be lying, but why? There was definitely an Oxy ward on the plans. "I was just going to use my break and try to find it," I said ambiguously, not mentioning the basement. "Oh, didn't you hear? Janice called in sick. You're going to have to sacrifice your break." I walked back to the Curie ward, damning the manager to hell. I grudgingly continued my rounds, not fully concentrating on thinking about the mystery of the Oxy ward. A woman caught me muttering to myself about it, and asked me if I was okay. I got angry and told her to piss off, which I think shut her up quite well. Suddenly, my shift was over, and I almost ran to the basement. I wasn't going to let some bastard director interrupt me this time. As I got down there, I was horrified by the stench. The dank smell of rotting meat burrowed into my nose, causing me to gag. My eyes started watering, and I stumbled over a large pair of double doors. "Oxy ward," said the sign, and I frantically threw open the doors. I wish I hadn't. Bodies littered the floor, with arms, eyes, and stomachs missing. A huge oven seemed to be cooking their severed limbs and organs. I threw up. Some were still conscious, groaning, calling to me to help them. Their jarring screams cut into me like knives. I looked around. Deep crimson was all that filled my eyes. And then I realized what HF meant. What I thought laughable when I first saw it. Hospital food. This is where James was taken. He was taken here and cut up and cooked and fed to the other patients. Oh shit. I had eaten hospital food just that day, for lunch. Had I eaten my patient? Twisted catering staff stood there, meat cleavers in hand, staring at me. "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" One asked me angrily. I knew exactly what I was doing. Grabbing a grimy knife from one of the unclean surfaces, I began walking towards them, anger filling my body. I was going to do to them what they had done to so many patients before them. The knife flashed through the air, slicing their bodies into pieces as if they were rag dolls. I hadn't known if I would be able to take them, but they were caught off guard and clearly obese. For a half an hour, I was in there, blindly stabbing into them. Then I ran, gagging from the blood that covered my clothes, people staring at me as I charged through the wards, aimlessly running to an exit. Gasping for air, I burst through the main doors and embraced the light. Suddenly, I was knocked to the ground and my vision began to blur. Blackness clawed at the corners of my eyes, and I gave up, letting the bliss of unconsciousness embrace me.
Case file 11372. Scott Jameson. Patient suffers from extreme paranoid schizophrenia and constructs intricate plots to explain his delusions. He justifies murdering a room full of catering staff by claiming that they were using patients to make food. Patients still believe that he is living outside in this place, even though he has been moved to the DSPD room. He has so far made 6 attempts to kill doctors, who he believes are government agents sent to stop him from spreading the truth. We cannot allow the public to know the truth. Patients must be kept in this institution until he can be executed.